On this episode of Canadian Football League Weekly, we discuss the Week 9 games played north of the border, where a CFL game ended in a tie for the first time in 7 years. Welcome to Canadian Football League Weekly, presented by the World of Football. Each week, we recap games played up north in the CFL, and we also look ahead to next week's games. I'm Randy Snow, and I'm joined by my son, Adam.
Hey, how's it going? I see that you're rocking a British Columbia Lions shirt there. That's a pretty neat shirt. Pretty old school.
You're jealous, aren't you?
I mean, when I got all this World of Football merchandise that I'm rocking, I mean, it's hard to be that jealous.
Well, I've got more shirts on the way. I've got a couple from the Hamilton Tiger Cats, one that's a real cool throwback, and one current one. So, not sure when those are coming. Hopefully, they'll be here by next week. So we shall see.
Yeah, no problem.
Did you want to advertise our 7th anniversary extravaganza coming up this week on This Week in the World of Football?
I don't know how much of an extravaganza it is. For those of you out there who don't know, we do have a podcast called This Week in the World of Football. We release it every Tuesday on whatever podcast feed you can find. We also post it on the YouTube channel here in its audio form. And it'll be our 7th anniversary show. We've been doing the podcast for 7 years, if you can believe it. I can hardly believe it sometimes.
Yeah.
And we'll have a few clips of the past year that we've kind of dug through and found on the show. And I don't know, it'll just be another podcast other than that. So swing by, check it out if you haven't yet. And then I'd also like to remind people out there that we will be doing our weekly NFL picks this season starting September 4th. So you can join Randy, myself, and my brother Aaron as we go through the full slate of NFL games every week and pick the winners. No point spreads for those of you out there looking for that. We don't do that. But we would love for people to come join us in the comments section of those videos, or we will post weekly posts in the community tab on our YouTube channel page for people to go in and leave their picks there as well. If you would like to play along this season, and maybe we'll read your names and keep track of you as the season goes along. So those are the big plugs there. Yeah, that's what I got.
Okay. All right, well, let's get into the scores from Week 10 in the CFL. On Thursday night, it was the Saskatchewan Roughriders in a tie with the Ottawa Redblacks, 22-22 in double overtime. There was no scoring in the first quarter, but late in the second quarter, the teams traded field goals for a 3-3 tie at the half. Ottawa led 10-3 with under 2 minutes to play in the fourth quarter, when Saskatchewan wide receiver Sean Bain scored the first touchdown of the game, tying the score at 10 apiece. Another exchange of field goals tied the game at 13-13 and sent the game into overtime. In overtime, Ottawa quarterback Dustin Crum scored on an 11-yard rushing touchdown. Saskatchewan answered with a touchdown pass by quarterback Shea Patterson to wide receiver Samuel Emilus, and the score was once again tied at 19-19. In the second overtime, each team settled for a field goal, and the game ended in a 22-22 tie. Ottawa quarterback Dustin Crum completed 21 of 32 passes for 211 yards and an interception. He also ran the ball 9 times for 72 yards and a touchdown. Backup quarterback Drew Brown completed 6 of 9 passes for 55 yards. Wide receiver Dominic Rhymes led the receivers with 5 catches for 72 yards. Kicker Lewis Ward made 5 field goals and had 2 more blocked. On defense, defensive back DeAndre Lamont had 8 tackles. For Saskatchewan, quarterback Shea Patterson completed 30 of 49 passes for 299 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. Wide receiver Dante Myers had 8 catches for 101 yards. Wide receiver Sean Bain had 8 catches for 90 yards and a touchdown. And wide receiver Samuel Emilus had 8 catches for 56 yards and a touchdown. On defense, linebacker Adam Auclair had 9 tackles. Now, the last time there was a tie in the CFL was on June 23, 2017, when Ottawa and Calgary played to a 31-31 tie in Ottawa's home opener that year. That's been 2,603 days if you're counting. So Yeah, I couldn't remember the last time I had seen a tie in the CFL.
I almost didn't think it was possible. I'm sure back in the day, back in the before TV had color, before probably even the invention of the forward pass. But I I was a bit surprised, and I was like watching the highlights from this because I didn't get to catch this one live. But I was like, all right, it got to the end of the second overtime. I'm like, all right, let's go overtime number 3. These teams are still going, and that was it. They only played 2
Yeah,
overtimes in the regular season. Apparently, I didn't know that was a thing.
yeah, I didn't
Shame on
either.
me, I guess. I mean, as much as I love the CFL, I still learn something new every week, and this is one of
Right.
them. I
Yeah,
think it's a little weird that they even let it get to 2 overtimes. If that's the case, if you're just going to end it in a tie after that, if you're going to go that far and not try to get a winner, what's the point? I mean, I guess giving
yeah.
each team a first possession makes a little sense, but even then, I'm like, what's the point of if it's just going to tie at the end of the first overtime? Then why even bother continuing? Like,
Well, it's obviously something that doesn't happen very often. I think I know when you
clearly,
look at this, when you look at the standings year in and year out, they always have a third column for ties, but I've just never seen one. And we've been doing our podcast now for 7 years, and this was 7 years ago that they had a tie. So, yeah, it's been a while, so it's pretty rare. It's pretty
do you
rare.
think we covered it, or we must have just missed that tie when we were covering the CFL that first year?
We might have covered it that first year. I don't remember it. That's a long time
Man,
ago.
7. That's a long time ago. I'm gonna have to jump back into the archives to find that information.
Yeah, yeah,
But no,
really.
look, I'm a little surprised. I mean, these were 2 really solid teams and clearly evenly matched. A little banged up, I mean, they had to have a couple quarterbacks play for the Red Blacks, and the Red Blacks are still such a good team. They should have won this game. They had a lead for most of it, but Saskatchewan just found that grit there towards the end of the game to make it a game, and put it essentially into overtime. I mean, they didn't put it into overtime. They finally scored the first touchdown, and that's when I was like, all right, Saskatchewan finally came alive. So I don't know. These are still 2 very good teams. I'm very curious to see what they do next. I mean, that's tie is tough. I mean, what is the famous saying in the NFL? It's like kissing your sister is a tie. So
Yeah.
I don't know. But what a hard fought game, though. I mean, you hear when there's a tie, you're like it's such an evenly matched game. I usually go, I don't know about evenly matched, but this was one of the most evenly matched things I think I've seen in a while. Pretty good.
Yeah. Yep.
Pretty. I mean,
Absolutely.
as far as ties go, this might be one of the best ties I've ever, even watched a recap of. Pretty good.
Yep.
All right, on Friday night, saw the Toronto Argonauts defeat the Calgary Stampeders 39-25. On Toronto's first possession, quarterback Nick Arbuckle threw a touchdown pass to wide receiver Mackay Polk for a 7-1 Argos lead. Calgary responded with a touchdown pass of their own from quarterback Jake Mayer to wide receiver Cam Eccles for an 8-7 Calgary lead. Late in the second quarter, Arbuckle was intercepted by Calgary defensive back Demario Houston, which led to a rushing touchdown by Calgary running back Peyton Logan just before the end of the half, giving the Stampeders a 15-7 lead going into halftime. Toronto wide receiver Janarian Grant returned a punt 85 yards for a touchdown and an 18-15 Toronto lead. In the fourth quarter, Calgary wide receiver Reggie Bagleton caught a long pass and then refused to go down, dragging several Toronto defenders with him, and was finally tackled at the 2-yard line. Backup quarterback Tommy Stevens came in and scored a rushing touchdown on the next play for a 22-21 Calgary lead. Argonaut defensive back Deshaun Amos then intercepted a pass and returned it 55 yards for a touchdown. A successful 2-point conversion gave the Argos the lead again to make it 29-22. Then a late touchdown run by Toronto running back Kadeem Carey sealed the win for the Argonauts. After last week's second half meltdown, Toronto quarterback Cameron Dukes was benched in favor of Nick Arbuckle, who made his first start of the season, completing 18-26 passes for 181 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Running back Kadeem Carey ran the ball 13 times for 89 yards and a touchdown, while wide receiver Mackay Polk had 4 catches for 50 yards and a touchdown. On defense, linebacker Frazier Sopik and defensive back Royce Mechie had 7 tackles each, and linebacker Robert Priester had 6 tackles, a sack, and a forced fumble. For Calgary, quarterback Jake Mayer completed 33 of 45 passes for 373 yards, a touchdown, and an interception, while backup quarterback Tommy Stevens had a rushing touchdown. Running back Peyton Logan ran the ball 11 times for 61 yards and a touchdown, while wide receiver Reggie Bagleton had 8 catches for 104 yards. On defense, defensive back Bentley Sanders had 5 tackles and a fumble recovery, while defensive back Demario Houston had 5 tackles and an interception. Yeah, so this was a rematch of last week's game, which obviously Toronto blew that lead in the fourth quarter.
Yep.
Calgary came back and won, hence leading to the benching of Cameron Dukes.
Yep.
This is a note you added here was that back judge Dave Gatza worked his 250th CFL game that night. He has worked 3 Grey Cups in his career. So, thoughts on this game?
Yeah. I thought it was nice that they actually said something nice about an official, for having a great career. They didn't say he was getting ready to retire or anything, but 250 games in the CFL is pretty good.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. As far as the game goes, I mean, this was a fun game to watch. Of course, I'm happy that Toronto won this game. Being an Argos fan, it could have gone either way. I mean, it was pretty close for most of the game, but yeah, towards the end, the Argonauts really put the hammer down and wound up with a win. So I was very happy to see that.
Yeah, talk about flipping the script. Toronto, obviously, they were down, the 15-7. I remember catching the score. I watched a little bit of the game, and I was like, man, Toronto just looks like they don't have it. And I think I had to go about my night. I had something else going on. We were prepping for going away this weekend, so I was probably taking care of that and turned the game off, get some sleep. And then I saw that they had a big, massive comeback, and they won by the margin they did. And I was just like, well, shoot, Toronto, where's that been? So they traded home and homes. They got the win, so now they're above 500 again. So it's that Argos team that, again, keeps going up and down. Same with the Calgary team. They're like both the mirror images of each other, kind of up and down. That neither team can seem to do much on the road, apparently. Home field is a different story for those two teams. So I don't know. We'll see where these two teams are heading. I mean, they're both in the thick of it in terms of the playoffs and all that jazz. So we'll have to wait and see.
On Saturday night, the Montreal Alouettes defeated the Hamilton Tiger Cats 33-23. Montreal jumped out to a 15-0 lead at the end of the first quarter thanks to a 51-yard touchdown pass from quarterback Davis Alexander to wide receiver Charleston Rambo. Hamilton would score just 2 Mark Leggio field goals in the first half, and Montreal led at halftime 19-6. In the fourth quarter, the two teams kept trading touchdowns. First, it was Montreal backup quarterback Dominic Davis scoring on a rushing touchdown. Then Hamilton wide receiver Luther Hakunavanu had a 16-yard touchdown catch. Montreal wide receiver Charleston Rambo returned the favor with his second touchdown pass of the game. And finally, Hamilton wide receiver Stephen Dunbar caught an 11-yard touchdown pass with 1 minute and 23 seconds remaining. The ensuing kickoff by Hamilton was recovered by Montreal, and they were able to run out the clock for their 8th win of the season. Montreal quarterback Davis Alexander completed 17 of 24 passes for 247 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also ran for 27 yards. Backup quarterback Dominic Davis ran the ball 3 times for 8 yards and a touchdown. Running back Walter Fletcher carried the ball 8 times for 53 yards, and wide receiver Charleston Rambo had 6 catches for 124 yards and 2 touchdowns. On defense, defensive backs Deontay Ruffin and Wesley Sutton each had 7 tackles, while linebacker Tyrese Beverett had 6 tackles and a sack. For Hamilton, quarterback Bo Levi Mitchell was replaced after just 2 series in favor of Taylor Powell, who completed 30 of 38 passes for 319 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also led the team in rushing with 52 yards. Wide receiver Shamar Bridges had 8 catches for 103 yards, and wide receiver Stephen Dunbar had 6 catches for 63 yards and a touchdown. On defense, linebacker Kyle Wilson had 6 tackles. This was another rematch game from last week, Hamilton and Montreal. The Tiger Cats have now lost back-to-back games to Montreal. So, can anybody stop Montreal? We keep saying this every week, and it's just I don't see anybody doing it.
I mean, they're clearly beatable. I mean, they got the one loss, so it's not like they're perfect. But I mean, it just stinks. Like when you're Hamilton and you're fighting your own battles on your own side. 2 series and they bench Bo Levi Mitchell is just tough. One play wasn't even his fault. The fullback just fumbled that ball. And the second play though, just like dang, like yeah, you can't throw those interceptions. And I don't know if I get it from the coaching staff side of things. Like, look, we need a spark, we need something. We've been struggling. We've already lost to them once last week. This ain't looking good. We need something. And I mean, I don't know if I would have done that 2 series in. I mean, 3 series maybe. If it was another turnover, then oh yeah, they get him out of there. But I mean, the first one wasn't Bo Levi's fault. Second one, maybe it was. But even then, just tough to see that for a guy who's been in the league as long as Bo Levi has. And we got to give it to Montreal. Let's not bury the lead. They are the best team for a reason. Stacked top to bottom, and it don't matter who's playing quarterback right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
You could be playing quarterback and probably win a game.
I don't know about that. For Hamilton, quarterback Taylor Powell did look good in this game, but the Ticats just got behind early and in the first half, and they just couldn't recover from that. It was just the lead was too big.
Yeah, and just Montreal, just every phase of the game just seems like it's not easy, but it just seems like they've got it down. The confidence is there. Nothing really rattles them. They're not afraid to let a team, even if they're up, like, okay, yeah, we let you guys score a couple. We're fine. We're not going to go into panic mode. We're not going to shut down or have a big major collapse. Like, this is a championship team for a reason, and they're proving it week in and week out.
Yeah, they just keep finding new ways to win. That's all.
Then on Sunday, saw the Edmonton Elks defeat the British Columbia Lions 33-16. On their first possession, British Columbia running back David Mackey scored a rushing touchdown, giving the Lions a 7-0 lead. In the second quarter, Edmonton running back Javon Leake scored on a rushing touchdown, but British Columbia still held on to the lead at 10-8. Edmonton quarterback Dakota Prukup had a rushing touchdown, and kicker Boris Beatty added a field goal to give Edmonton a 19-10 lead at the half. British Columbia kicker Sean White had 2 field goals in the third quarter to close the score to 19-16 in favor of Edmonton. In the fourth quarter, Edmonton quarterback McLeod Bethel Thompson threw a touchdown pass to running back Justin Rankin. The 2-point conversion was good, and Edmonton now had a 30-16 lead. A late field goal by Boris Beatty made the final score 33-16, giving Edmonton their second win of the season. Edmonton quarterback Trey Ford completed 6 of 6 passes for 96 yards before being injured late in the second quarter. He was replaced by McLeod Bethel Thompson, who completed 14 of 18 passes for 171 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Running back Javon Leake ran the ball 21 times for 97 yards and a touchdown, while wide receiver Tevin Jones had 6 catches for 123 yards. On defense, linebackers Derek Moncrief and Niles Morgan each had 7 tackles. For British Columbia, quarterback Jake Dolagala completed 14 of 23 passes for 146 yards and no touchdowns. Running back William Stanbeck ran the ball 13 times for 87 yards, and wide receiver Keon Hatcher led the receivers with 4 catches for 62 yards. On defense, defensive back TJ Lee had 8 tackles. Hey, kudos to Edmonton. That's 2 straight wins after starting the season 0-7. But for British Columbia, though, dropping their last 3, been tough to see. I thought British Columbia was one of the top teams, and now they're definitely starting to drop.
Yeah, I mean they started out 5-1. You jinxed them with
that shirt.
Yeah, they started the season 5-1, and I really thought they were going to be one of the top teams in the West. But yeah, they're kind of fading fast right now. Their quarterback's out with an injury, and he's week to week. Vernon Adams. Not sure when he's coming back. He was there on the sidelines, in street clothes, throwing the ball around, but they just don't know when he's coming back from his injury. So, they gotta play who they got there.
Yeah, and then for Edmonton, I mean, losing Trey Ford, I don't know how bad the injury is. I haven't heard anything yet, but that sucks to see. He was a guy I loved watching. Obviously last week helped him get the lead. I think he started this game off pretty good. 6 for 6. Seemed like he had that spark. The team had that energy, and so McLeod Bethel Thompson could kind of come in and just kind of ride that high, and not mess things up. Not that McLeod, I feel like, was ever the problem for Edmonton, but I don't know. I feel like that team just had a new energy around Trey Ford. I think that kind of carried over when McLeod had to take over for him.
Yeah. And then one other thing from this game is British Columbia kicker Sean White was 3 for 3 in the game, and he extended his consecutive field goal streak to 45 straight. They didn't get a whole lot of attention. They talked about it a little bit during the broadcast, but that's an incredible feat right there. Who
Yeah.
knows how long he can keep this going?
Who knows? And I mean, have you ever done a streak of 45 of anything? Push-ups, sit-ups? I mean, you probably had 45 donut holes at one point in a row,
I was
but
just gonna say,
other than that,
donuts probably, but yeah, no, it's an incredible feat. Not the donuts, the field goal streak.
I was about to say that is an incredible feat if you ate 45 donuts. You'd probably give the donut eating champion last week there, Mr. Tony Joey Chestnut there, a run for his money.
No, that's not an incredible feat. That's just a Tuesday.
Oh, there you go. All right, and then on by this week, obviously not the British Columbia Lions, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. My bad.
All right, let's look at the CFL standings after Week 10. In the East Division, it's the Montreal Alouettes at 8-1, Ottawa Red Blacks at 5-2-1, Toronto Argonauts at 5-4, and the Hamilton Tiger Cats at 2-7. In the West Division, it's the Saskatchewan Roughriders at 5-3-1, the BC Lions at 5-4, Calgary Stampeders at 4-5, Winnipeg Blue Bombers at 3-6, and the Edmonton Elks at 2-7. Looking ahead to Week 11, on Thursday night it's Ottawa at Calgary, Friday it's Montreal at Saskatchewan, Saturday Edmonton at Hamilton, Sunday Winnipeg at British Columbia, and this week the Toronto Argonauts have the bye. All right, let's talk about a couple of news items that came out of last week. The CFL is reviewing documentation and has not set any timeline on when they will decide if suspended Toronto quarterback Chad Kelly will be allowed to return to the team. He's serving a minimum 8-game suspension for gender-based violence. This was the 9th game of the season, so he could return as soon as next week, but they haven't set a deadline for saying when they're going to allow him to come back, if at all. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens this week.
From everything I kind of looked at and read, I don't think it's going to happen. I think his time in the CFL is probably done. Whether that be from the CFL dragging their feet on any sort of process they got to deal with or what, I don't see him playing another snap in the CFL anytime soon.
You could be right. Yeah, I don't know. All right, and then the other story was the Atlanta Falcons have released Canadian quarterback Nathan Rourke after he played in one preseason game for him.
Hey there, Adam chiming in as he's editing the video, and of course we know now that Nathan Rourke did sign with the British Columbia Lions. Just wanted to throw that out there before everybody commented that we were just talking about Nathan Rourke not signing with anybody when he did. So there you go. Bye.
He completed just 3 of 13 passes for 37 yards, and he also ran twice for 24 yards in a preseason game against the Miami Dolphins. I understand he had a couple of passes that were dropped. I mean, they were right in the receiver's hands. So that was 2 completions that should have been, completed, but they weren't. So I don't know. I would just like to see him back in the CFL. You were saying how much of his $900,000 contract was he going to get? What's one game check in the preseason worth out of that contract?
Yeah.
I don't know. So.
Hard to say, but I mean, like we've mentioned for weeks now, because we've talked about him being released and then signed. So this is the 3rd time we've had to bring up Nathan Rourke on the show. I don't know. I get it. Chase your NFL dreams. I hope he gets signed again by another team, a team that would like to have him. I know the Detroit Lions have some backup quarterback issues that we would love to get solved, but I don't know. I would definitely love to see him come back in the CFL. There's a couple teams here that could probably use a dude who's got CFL experience. I think between the Argonauts, Tiger Cats, and at this point maybe even the
BC
Saskatchewan
Lions,
Rough Riders or BC Lions could use it. I mean, half the league could use a Nathan Rourke right now.
Yeah, you sure could.
I mean, if your team and imagine if he signed with like a Montreal Alouettes and it's done, you might as well give him the Grey Cup at this point. But he was a CFL talent, and I hate seeing him kind of not floundering in the NFL, but getting kind of battered around by these teams that either they don't know what they have or they're not willing to give him a chance, and they're just willing to discard him. Like, just let him go. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on with it. It's just frustrating as a fan of Nathan Rourke to see that happen down here in the States.
Yep, I agree. Well, that's all the time we've got for this week. Remember, folks, some people may love football more than we do, but nobody, and I mean nobody, loves more football than Adam and I sitting here in Kalamazoo talking football. Until next time, I'm Randy Snow.
And get that merch sometime soon.
And we'll see you next week somewhere around the 55-yard line.